2, 1. Here I've done here, coming to you with your tip of the week. We may be out for the next few days, so I'm going to probably stack a few of these on top into the queue here before we get gone. But right now, we're going to get into a concept with damage builds between your DPS damage build for PvE and your damage combo sets for PvP. The difference primarily depends on your damage PvE set is a sustained damage, and your PvP set is a kill combo, something that comes up all at once, directly onto the target, kills it immediately. If you're familiar with the MMOs, you've probably heard that concept before, but let's take a look at what it means inside the game here. So currently, we're on our primary character here, and we have what I would call a standard PvE damage setup right now. As you can see here, all these things are basically dots, and apologize here, I do have to adjust one thing here. Caltrops on there. And basically each one of these here does damage over time abilities, as well as raise our critical rating as well. Other MMOs, critical rating might be more important, but with the ESO, critical rating may not be as important for your PvP because we have things like impenetrable, which will reduce your critical damage. So the overall damage and your penetration might be a little bit more important, but we'll get into that in a little bit more. So basically what you want to do is you want to come up to a mob and you want to focus on rotation with PvE. I'm not great at rotation myself, but get that going, that. And at this point, I have all my abilities off at once. And if this is a little bit tougher, those dots would have ticked off longer, gone off more time here. As you can see here, every single one of these here has a good duration to it. Like usually about 10-second duration. So usually by the time I can get all of these off, I can get the next ability off. Now, with Morrowind, they changed things up a little bit more. So instead of certain abilities that used to be meta, such as like Rapid Strikes and like Wrecking Blow and all that stuff for your DPS side, those don't have as much effect right now because you have to be able to sustain yourself. You don't have as much sustain given the tech they took out the Warlord and a few other CP things. But with the heavy attack meta, basically you can now put on all your dots and then rotate in 2 or 3 heavy attacks to get your stuff back, as well as a potion drink to then boost up other things as well. Now, when you take a look at a PvP setup, we're going to change it just slightly here, but I'm not going to do a full PvP setup per se. I'll put that on there. Apologize while I switch something up here as well. Now we're going with the Greatsword because it has a bit more burst, which is what you want for PvP. In addition to that, it has a crit rush, which is a gap closer, which is very important for some of that. Like that. Okay, so the difference with PvP is typically you want to come up to your enemy here, and we're going to use this ability here, Lethal Arrow. It takes a long time to cast, but the idea here is that it takes a long time to reach the enemy. So you come up with this. Dead already. Let's see if we can get this guy here. So 1. Yeah, see, a lot of these guys are a little bit too weak for me to go into. They just die real quick. Yeah, not going into that one. Let's see if I can find another hunger here so we can show some of it off. Yeah, here we go. So we're going to go after this guy here. Right? So we're going to do this. Quick rush in. Now, most of these abilities I'm using pretty fast. I know it's hard to see what's going on here, but basically, you see the lethal arrow here takes a while to go off. While that is going off and heading over into the air, I'm doing a quick light attack, going in with the poison injection to add on to the damage. Typically, if I'm in stealth, that's going to stun the enemy while I'm doing that. Then, swap over, hitting my crit rush, because while those arrows are in the air, the enemy is still way over there. Crit rush in, then, usually using a wrecking blow, I can kill them, or I can also switch over to a word slice to execute them if they're in the execute range, depending on how far you got them and how squishy your target is. Now, most of your abilities are going to be stacked up that way in different ways of forms. Like, the reason I'm not going to give a specific build combo to you right now is because these things change regularly. Like, sometimes this stuff gets nerfed, this gets nerfed, whatever has you. So, the basic concept that I'm trying to tell you, though, is with your PvP kill stuff, you want to have stuff that takes a delay to get to the enemy, as long as a delay to get to the enemy, along with other stuff you can cancel in to stack on damage before the end. Your idea is to keep the pressure on them rather than have to deal with an overtime effect. Now, PvE stuff, again, slightly different here. Like, lethal arrow and PvE, not great. You actually, take aim is more the meta for PvP anyways. But lethal arrow, though despite it being a dot, doesn't do a whole lot of damage in DPS-wise, given its casting time. Poison injection works well in both because it's a pretty good dot and a pretty good direct damage, given the fact it's an execute on top of that. Your general crit rush or your gap closers don't work well in PvE because typically your enemies are going to be standing still and you don't get a whole lot of damage. Exception might be with the Nightblade's teleport strike, which still does a good amount of damage. Wrecking blow, more of a PvE skill because it raises that damage than other ones, which is dizzying swing, which gives a good amount of damage and a CC. And then reverse slice. So that's kind of what you want to do with that. So most of these guys, when you see them coming in here and showing their builds off, sorry, let me get out of here before we get interrupted by some of these guys here. Most of these guys, when you see them coming in here with these abilities, you're going to see a slight difference between the PvE side and the PvP side. And that's typically the difference there. With your PvE side, you want to focus more on damage, sustained, overtime stuff. Remember, your guys in your PvE are not going to do things like cleanse, dodge, block, etc. You're going to have a very predictable pattern with the NPCs. With your PvP, on the other hand, you're going to have to get your stuff off quick. Typically with the most damage that you can get off bursted, that way the enemy doesn't have time to react. That's the basic difference there. So when you're trying to figure out builds, and you're trying to figure out what works for you, what builds you want to go with, take a look for these concepts. Looking for sustained damage over on the PvE side. In the PvP side, you want to have that burst combo damage. Okay? Hope that helps. Catch you in the meantime, guys.